Hi, I'm Elizabeth Russell, and this is Cape Wide News. We'd like to thank this week's sponsors, M.L. Riley Construction in Bourne, Commercial Realty Advisors in Hyannis, and Takis Pizza and Subs in West Yarmouth. One person was injured in a four-car accident Thursday afternoon in Harwich at Route 124 in Main Street. A Harwich ambulance transported one driver to the hospital, and medics evaluated a number of others, all of whom refused further treatment or support. Both lanes of Route 124 were blocked between Main Street and the Old Colony Road until the scene could be cleared. Provincetown and Truro Police conducted a drug raid this week at 10 Alden Street. That's where officers seized more than 30 grams of methamphetamine, numerous other drugs, $1,000 in cash, scales, and packing materials commonly used for sale and distribution of illegal drugs. 52-year-old Stephen Page was arrested and charged with trafficking in methamphetamine and drug-related offenses. On Thursday, the Eastham Fire Department responded to an automatic fire alarm at the Red Barn Pizza restaurant on Route 6. Arriving police units reported moderate smoke showing from the interior of the restaurant. A small fire was located in a ventilation shaft which had extended to the surrounding wood frame of the roof structure. Firefighters were able to extinguish the flames and remove the ventilation unit. A pickup truck with a trailer rolled into the water in Bourne Wednesday afternoon. The incident happened at Barlow's Landing Road boat ramp, apparently as a watercraft was being launched. No injuries were reported, and the cause was under investigation by Bourne police. The Centerville, Osterville, Marston's Mills Fire Department responded to a report of a car into a house on the corner of Eben Smith Road and James Otis Road in Centerville Wednesday. On arrival, they found a Pontiac Bonneville had gone through the garage at 302 James Otis Road. The driver declined medical care, and the building inspector was called to check the structure. The crash is under investigation by Barnstable Police. A LoJack signal received by a Wareham police officer Tuesday afternoon led to the arrest of a man on drug charges. A detective received a signal that indicated a stolen vehicle was in the Wareham area. The signal was tracked to a garage on the Cranberry Highway where the vehicle and a male, later identified as 35-year-old resident Tyrone Lindsay, were located. The vehicle was confirmed as being stolen from Taunton earlier during the day. A further investigation determined that Lindsay was allegedly in possession of just under 20 grams of crack cocaine with a street value of approximately $2,000 along with $1,163 in cash. He was arrested and charged with trafficking in cocaine and other violations. A rare yellow lobster was pulled from the waters off Cape Cod by Dennis fisherman Zach King this week. King, who owns the fishing vessel Emma Rose, pulled in the catch. According to fishing experts, the catch is a 1 in 30 million find. Chatham police dealt with a water main break late Monday afternoon in the area of 275 Barcliff Ave. The road was closed while crews worked to fix the pipe and remove the water. Harwich Fire and Rescue responded to a possible body in the water at Saquatucket Harbor on Route 28 last Sunday. The body of a deceased male was recovered from the water. The Cape and Islands District Attorney's Office has identified the man as 59-year-old Peter Benya of New Jersey. A statement from the office said there is nothing at this time to indicate the cause of death was anything other than accidental. That's a look at Cape Wide News this week. Let's go in-depth with a story that's been making headlines for months, the ongoing opioid epidemic. Matt Pitta sat down with the members of the Yarmouth Police Department for an update.
We've been battling this opiate crisis for years now here, not just on the Cape and the Islands, but across Massachusetts and the nation. And the two gentlemen with us here today have been on the front line of it for a long time. Deputy Police Chief Stephen Exaros. Deputy, thanks for letting us come by today and talk a little bit about this issue.
We're glad you're here. It's important to talk about.
It really is. And also Detective Michael Bryant, Lieutenant Michael Bryant. Lieutenant, thanks so much for stopping by or letting us stop by. I appreciate your time here today.
Anytime. It's good to get this information out.
So, Deputy, I'll start with you. You know, we've been covering this from the news media side for a couple of years now, and every now and then it feels like we're making some progress, but I feel as though just as a society or as a community, we've taken some steps back. Fentanyl's now here in the community. People warned us about this, and we're seeing a spike right now, aren't we? We're seeing numbers going up.
We are, and it's very frustrating, but it's important not to give up our hope of, turning the tide on this drug epidemic, as you said, is countrywide, but it's also a crime. And sometimes that gets pushed aside. So as law enforcement, we have to make sure people realize using heroin, fentanyl, whether you're selling it or using it, it is a crime. So that's our main role. But we're also involved with the community. We see this as a problem that we have to resolve as a community. And that's why we tie in the Board of Health and other agencies that are out there. But it is sad, it is frustrating, because we saw this coming 3 or 4 years ago, and as you said, here we are in the middle of it. And remember, people are overdosing every single day somewhere on Cape Cod and dying at the rate of 3 or 4 a day in Massachusetts, every day. And if that was cancer or the flu, what would we be doing about that? But here it is, a heroin epidemic, and we're doing the best we can as a community to put a lid on it the best we can and try to change a generation.
In late April, you issued some new numbers just for the town of Yarmouth. Known heroin fentanyl overdoses, about 24, 25, 5 fatalities from that, and 17 Narcan saves. We'll talk about the Narcan a little bit later. But when you think of a community that, not a huge community population-wise, it's a lot of people that are dying from this drug.
Yes, it is. And now, in one way, it's a small segment of the population that's involved with this, but it affects so many. I have it in my family, and I'm honest and open about that I see it as a family member and also as a police officer. Probably everybody has somebody involved with it, and usually there's some other issue, and that's what we're finding out. It's not only the use of prescription pain medicine that may have led to now a heroin addiction, but there's other reasons that if you peel it back, maybe there's depression, maybe there's abuse. So it's a complicated problem, and law enforcement needs to stay strong in what we do, and that's enforce the law, and that's where Lieutenant Bryant and his detectives and our proactive anti-crime unit, they're out there every day making significant arrests of drug dealers who are coming from Boston or Providence and really spreading poison here on Cape Cod and in Yarmouth.
Lieutenant, could you talk a little bit more about the fentanyl aspect of this? And it seems to me it's a newer aspect to the heroin epidemic in the last couple of years. And I know Rep. Whalen, who represents a big portion of Yarmouth, really seems to be had been on the forefront of this. He put out a warning signal some time ago, and unfortunately, what he talked about is now here. Can you talk about that fentanyl aspect?
Yeah, so the issue with the fentanyl, because we've seen it coming for a few years, it's cheaper, it's easier, and they use it as a cut, but it's the deadly portion of it. So when they're mixing the fentanyl with the heroin, or in some cases it's just straight fentanyl, because the actual buyer, they don't know what they're getting. We have machines upstairs to test it, and even our machine sometimes isn't accurate, because the cuts that they're putting into the heroin or the fentanyl, or if it's straight on one end or the other, are unknown to the users. So they may think they have a tolerance or a buildup to one drug, but they're actually getting another. So their body can't handle whatever they're getting.
What's driving this? We talk about the addiction. I know that you folks have your meetings here on a regular basis for the community, but even just beyond Yarmouth, what is driving this epidemic? Do we have a handle on that at this point?
Well, I think the deputy touched on it. The driving factor is many. There could be health issues, medical issues, depression, family abuse. So depending on where that individual is coming from, could be that driving factor. But there's just too many of them to label and say, this is what's causing people to do heroin and fentanyl, because there's too many issues involved.
Yeah, we've had people tell us they're trying to numb pain. And that pain can be a physical pain from an operation, which is like a classic scenario. Somebody has a serious back injury, they have an operation, they get prescribed opioids. We've done a much better job on that. The state and the federal government have worked very closely with the doctors to limit what they're giving out. And also a big thing is they need to check to see who has given out pills when this patient comes to them. So there's a process where they can go into a computer and see if this patient has gone anywhere else and is doctor shopping. That's put a lid on it. But it looks like they're trying to numb pain. And it can be from an operation or what's coming out. And what I've learned is, like the lieutenant said, there's other issues. They may have been abused when they were younger, or they're escaping some type of pain, and the drug gives them a temporary way to like escape pain, where that's the wrong thing to do. But sadly, there's a lot of people doing that.
Do we need to still work then on the prescription side in terms of educating the healthcare portion of this equation and making sure they're not overprescribing? Is that
We
still
have to
part of
stay on that. We've made a big increase on that, and it's better. Even, like I said, this computerized system didn't exist years ago. So someone could come in, say, oh, I hurt my back, get a prescription, and go to 5 other doctors, and they're doing, in their mind, the right thing, but that's been abused. The lid has been, closed on that. So we have to stay on that. That's a success, but you can't back down. But there's more to it. Where there's a will, there's a way. And unfortunately, we have a whole generation, sadly, addicted to painkillers, whether it's some type of medicine or the illegal heroin or fentanyl. And you have a good point. Do they know better? Do we need to educate the users more? We feel they should know better by now that it's not good for them. It's illegal, it's unhealthy, but they still do it. So we have to stop what's happening now, and then as a police department, we can be judged on how we solve a crime, which we're very good at that, but we really should be based and judged on how we prevent crime. And how do we stop the next generation? That's important. So they're not involved with it, because once you become addicted, it is very hard to stop.
You talk about the age aspect of this, Lieutenant. I'm shocked and continue to be shocked at how young the education is starting when it comes to drug addiction. I know that Gosnold some time ago had started a pilot program down in Nauset in the, I think in the middle school, and I was thinking and asked the experts, I said, so you need to get the kids that are that young of an age? And they said, we have to start there. If we don't start there, it's going to filter into that age group.
Yeah, exactly, because right now we're seeing the average age on the overdose deaths of between 30 and 40. So it's not 15 and 16-year-old kids. The problem is 10 years from now, 15 years from now, what are we producing? Because they're seeing it as commonplace for them. And if the drugs are in their home and they're not being taught at home, drugs are bad, they're dangerous, they can kill you, somebody else has to do it.
Yeah.
So all of these programs, regardless of where they come from or start, you can never forget the young people, because 15 years from now, they're the 35-year-old that's overdosing, and we're scratching our heads saying, how did he not know better?
Yeah, what we're seeing is, as the lieutenant's saying, the age of an overdose is right around 32. But it doesn't mean they just started using it. They've been using it for years. And remember, you mentioned something earlier. We talked about this is not like a medicine that someone made in a pharmaceutical lab. It's poison that some criminal made, and it comes from China. It comes from Mexico. It can come through Canada. There's all kinds of ways. But once it gets here and it's cut with stuff, you don't know what's in it, and the person who takes it doesn't know. But I believe they're just looking for that temporary fix or high to alleviate whatever pain they're in. Sometimes our job is not to look at the why in law enforcement. It's really to aggressively address crime, and we're doing that. But it's also to do with compassion, and that's why we tie in all the groups. And you mentioned every Tuesday night. If you really want to see something, come here on a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock and see the pain of the parents, the grandparents, the brothers, the sisters, struggling with an addiction of their loved one. They worry every day that their son or daughter or grandchild will die. They'd rather have them in jail. They've told me, one of the best feelings is to see my son or daughter arrested. They're in jail, off the street. At least they'll stop using and maybe get some help, because the pain it takes and the toll on a family, we see it every Tuesday. And we can't become numb to it. That's the danger, that, well, that's just the way it is. No, we can make a difference. We just have to keep pushing.
I want to touch on one other section for this piece, and just quickly on the supply side. Where is it coming from when we're talking about the heroin? How do we get to that? Is there a solution to that?
I think the issue with where it comes from is almost any place.
Yeah.
Cape Cod isn't immune to the I-95 corridor where they're all coming in from, but you have seed cities or deposit cities like New Bedford, Fall River. I grew up in the city of Lawrence, in Lawrence. So it's any number of places, and as fast as we can arrest and put a quote dealer away, there's 2 or 3 more that will pop up. So just when we think we got the main dealers, it's so rampant and it's all over the place, you really don't. So it's this constant battle trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and the federal government is doing a fantastic job, I believe. Even our military, we know that part of the mission is to stop the drugs in Afghanistan. That's part of what they're trying to do. But where there's a will, there's a way. And if there's people that want it, they're going to find it. And who's in the middle of that? It's law enforcement, and that's what we're doing here in Yarmouth. We don't believe in having people come in and turn their drugs in and let them get away with it. That's not our style. Anyone that needs help, we'll gladly help them, get help. But if you're going to break the law, you're going to be held accountable. And that might sound hard, but that's based on what families have asked us to do. And we do that with compassion. And I've seen it where we go to the addicts' homes. When someone overdoses and they're saved, either by a family member using Narcan or firefighters or law enforcement, which is wonderful. They're saved. It gives them another chance. When we go to their home the next day with a counselor from Gosnold and a police officer, the parents are grateful that we're trying to get them help, and there's so much pain, so much sadness, and I've been to the funerals, and it's really what America should not be about.
We'd like to thank the Yarmouth Police Department for their help this week on that story. Much more coverage on the Cape's drug crisis in the weeks to come. I'm Elizabeth Russell, and this has been Cape Wide News. We'd like to thank this week's sponsors, M.L. Riley Construction in Bourne, Commercial Realty Advisors in Hyannis, and Takis Pizza and Subs in West Yarmouth.